Hi, everybody. Welcome down the rabbit hole. Okay, it's only like the third day of summer, and we spent almost the entire day outside playing with the water, like playing with the hose, doing all kinds of water activities. And my kids actually ended up like cleaning all our outside furniture and washing my car, which I was like, this is good. I really like this. We also set up a slip and slide for them. Well, I set up the slip and slide for them. And of course, it didn't work. They never work. Hi, Ivana. Hi, Erie Jane. Good to see you guys. Thank you for coming, Ivana. I ordered like this industrial strength slip and slide that's like 50 feet long, and I still don't think it's going to work. That's coming in a couple of days, but we'll give it a try. But they had a great time. They were all over the trampoline, and it was good. I'm grateful that they were out and about so much, but now they're really tired and they're both taking naps. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this moment to hop on and just chat. I just started Ivana. Hi, Tammy. Hi, Triple J. And just chat about something that popped up when I went to go take a look at my news like portal. So Mary Brown from the Sisterwives gave an interview to People magazine. There's been a lot going on with this family over the last couple of months. You guys know I haven't really been talking about it on my channel. And the reasons why are that it made me incredibly sad. I was really grieving over watching someone grow up on TV and then realizing that they're no longer here. And I was really grieving for the mothers and all of the siblings left behind. It's a little bit harder to grieve for Cody, but of course, I had a lot of feelings of, wow, he's really going to have a lot of regrets in his life about his lack of involvement or relationship with Garrison and some of his other sons as well. So it was really difficult watching all of that, and I just didn't feel comfortable talking about it on my channel. Hi, Mama Cat. Hi, Marie. Good to see you guys. Happy Wednesday. Hi, Just Slow Mo Queen and Ruth. Good to see all you guys. So it was hard watching all of that happen. I really had to kind of shut down. I shut myself down to extra news about what was going on. I didn't watch very many videos about it. I just really didn't feel like it was something I wanted to immerse myself in for my own mental health. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about this article, what Mary has to say, and then also talk about a lot of the long-term ramifications I believe we're seeing and we're feeling from the COVID crisis, which started in 2020. And I have so much to say about that because I feel that myself and my children were deeply affected by it. Okay, I'm going to show you the article. Let me pull it up. Give me one sec. Go here. And here. Okay. Can you still hear me? I think you can. All right, so this is the article that was on People magazine. It's going to scroll through because I took a video of it. So I just wanted to make you aware that Mary did this interview, and she let the writer know that she's really been concerned about Janelle and Cody. Here they write that Mary said, Janelle and Cody have good days and bad days after losing Garrison. I just feel so much for Janelle, Mary said, reflecting on how the family is coping with Garrison's death. Mary went on a podcast, and it was called the Misunderstood podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts from. It was this past Monday, and she talked about how the family is doing their best to cope with everything that happened recently, and specifically the death of Garrison. She said that grief is really a long road for all of them, but especially for Cody and Janelle, obviously. And she says, like, of course, they're going to be good and bad days. I don't know how there couldn't be. There's still signs there. She said, there's still times where I'll see a picture of Garrison and I'm like, oh, I don't like that this happened. It's really sad. That statement is a little odd to me. I need to listen to it on the podcast, but I do think it's kind of strange that there's sort of almost like a little bit, from my point of view, I feel that sometimes I feel this disconnect with Mary. Like, instead of allowing herself, I just don't see her as being someone that I could relate to. Like, she's not emotional. She's not the way that I am. She's not emotional enough about what's happened here. This has been a huge tragedy for everyone in that family. What happened was so incredibly heartbreaking, and it happens to a lot of people who aren't famous and don't have a huge following. And to actually see it happen in such a public way and have so much information put out about it was really hard to watch. It's like, for me, as a person who's watched this show for so many years, I wanted to reach through the TV and, like, give Garrison a hug, give all the kids hugs, like, let them know, how important they are to so many people who watch them. But I mean, of course, these are just parasocial relationships, and their relationships and their real lives are what matter. And likely some of those relationships were lacking in a way that led Garrison to feel so alone. And it's very hard to know that. Over the past 2 seasons, we really saw Cody give up on his relationship with his children. It is a reality show, but I think that it was focused on so deeply and spoken about on everyone's social media, like Garrison's social media, all the kids' social media, that we can surmise that for sure there was a big gap between Cody and his children. Now, I think that this can happen in all kinds of families, all kinds of relationships, not just polygamy. But of course, polygamy is going to lend to having this sort of distance between a father and his children when he has multiple wives, multiple families. And in Cody's case, it's like a lot of his kids were very grown up when he started his relationship with Robin and had additional children. So, of course, that created an even wider gap between everyone. And we watched as they moved around the country and separated the kids from their friends, their community, people who understood them, so that the children really became very, I would imagine it would set the kids up to become very dependent on each other and on their parents, because they're not going to have that steady, like, teacher that they see every year at school. Even though it was their first grade teacher, they still see them in the hallway. They still say hi. They're not going to have that steady neighborhood that they've always gone out and played in. I mean, I see this with my own kids who we've moved around the world with. You really take them away from having that kind of feeling of community around them. And then it's really important for me to address how I believe that it's highly likely COVID and our reaction to COVID, as a country, as a community, the reactions all over the world also likely contributed to some of what happened with Garrison Brown, but not just with him, because there are so many people and so many situations, so many kids, so many elderly people who have been deeply affected by the loneliness and the isolation that happened during COVID. Hi, Ruth. Hi, Christine. Let me scroll up. Triple J says, I watched this gap in my own family, for sure. It happens in many families. Yes. And of course, it was more likely, there was just a greater chance, a more chaotic environment in a family where you have 4 different wives and one husband. And, the whole idea of how the family works, where we were given a look into the fact that they believed in creating, having as many children as possible, creating as many different families as possible. That contributed to what happened here as well. But in my own personal experience, with everything that happened during and after COVID, I have seen so many mental health issues blossoming out of, even just 1 year's time of being very isolated, having to stay in the house, focusing a lot on relationships through the internet, watching a lot of YouTube, watching a lot of TV. I don't know if you guys know that YouTube was at its peak, like at its highest by 2021. And I think that spoke very much to the fact that people were isolated in their homes. By 2020, they started really catching on and watching all these different shows on YouTube. It was their way of feeling like they were involved or they were outside of their house. And then by 2021, it's like all of these channels really blew up and they were getting the most views that's ever happened for the platform, for the YouTube platform. And that's gone down significantly over the past year. And I was reading an article about how, we're just now starting to see people trying to get out of maybe a slump that they got into during the years of COVID. All right. I would love to hear like what your personal experience was with COVID, but I want to talk a little bit about mine because, we faced a lot of issues that I feel like a lot of families can relate to. Ivana says, definitely COVID caused a lot more issues in families. People were isolated, not able to go out and talk to people face to face. Ruth, me too. And this is so early for me. It's on at 10 p.m. I'm looking at happy to see the good Katie. Oh, thank you, Ruth. You're so sweet. And April says hi. Hi, April. Okay. So for those of you that aren't aware, I have spent the past, I don't know if it's like 6 years now. I think it's been 6 years. Yeah, because Aubrey would have been around four. Okay. We've spent the past 6 years moving around the world for my husband's job. Okay. We've lived in, so it would be 7 years. Okay. Close to 7 years. We've lived in India, in Mexico, and in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So when COVID hit in 2020, we were living in Mexico. We were living in this big, beautiful house provided to us by my husband's job. I had my 2 very small children. We had just moved there. I had only been there for, I don't know, let's say like 4 months or something, maybe a little bit longer. When COVID hit, my daughter was in school. My son, who was getting ready to turn 2, something like that. I could be off with the timing. I had started to realize that he was likely on the autism spectrum. So when COVID hit, we were told as a community of Americans living in Mexico and providing services to this job that my husband has, we were told that it was time to make a decision to either evacuate across the world. Everybody in every country was told it's time to evacuate or make the choice to stay with your spouse, because most of the situations would be there was like one spouse working at this type of job. And we were told that we were given a lot of different options. Like if you go back to the United States, you could get like a small stipend because the spouse still has to remain at the job. So you'll be separated from your spouse who's working, and they would, stay in whatever apartment or house you've been given in that country, but then you have to go back to the United States and maybe you'll get a small stipend to find housing. Now for me, in my personal situation, I was really looking at this. I was being told by many people around me that were supposed to know because they were supposed to be like high-ranking officials involved in the government that, this was something they were looking at dealing with. COVID was something they were looking at dealing with for a couple of months. Okay. And for me, I was like, I don't want to go. We didn't have a house back in the United States at that time. I don't have a lot of family left that are alive. My husband's family is wonderful, but I didn't want to have to, force them to live with me, go to their house and live with them. So I made the decision to stay in Mexico with my husband and my children. And I won't say that I regret the decision because I don't know what else I would have done, but I will say that the majority of spouses chose to go home and evacuate with their children. So we stayed in Mexico and we spent the next year and a half without any very little interaction with other people. Mexico really completely shut down people getting out. You weren't even allowed to walk on the street. We weren't supposed to go to grocery stores. Everything was to be ordered. Well, it depends. I want to say it absolutely depends on where you were living. I'm sure other cities did it differently. But for us, come here, buddy. Come on. Come on. Do you want that off? Come here. Come on, Spooks. Come on. I'll take it off. Sorry, my dog has his leash on and it's like annoying to him. Okay. Ivana says, for me, the time during COVID was difficult for different reasons. It was during that time I slowly lost the ability to walk. So on top of the COVID issue, I dealt with so much depression. Yeah, I can't even imagine, Ivana. Like, and see, that's kind of something that I'm trying to bring forward, is that everybody in every walk of life had a different reaction, a different situation when it comes to COVID. I have a younger sister-in-law who's absolutely amazing, and she had just gotten married like before COVID, and both of them had regular jobs in the United States, and they were allowed to like stay home, work from home. I think my sister-in-law was also going to school, so she went to school from home. And when I talked to her about like how hard COVID was for me and my children, like what an impact it made on our lives, she was like, oh my God, I had no idea. Like only thing that happened for me with COVID is I got to stay home more. So that was very interesting. She didn't have children. She had a very different experience of COVID. She also lives in Florida, so they were quick to pick everything back up and just get right back to it. But my experience with my children was really hard and really heartbreaking. We were in a town that chose to completely shut down. In Mexico, at least where we were, school was aired on TV. That was really interesting. So I chose not to do that, and I homeschooled my kids for that period of time. It was very difficult for me, even though I've always been a person who loves children and loves, I thought I would be a teacher. Before I became a nurse, I thought about being a teacher. I really struggled with it because I realized that it would be so much easier if you had like a group of kids where they could all play together and interact with one another. But now I just had my daughter and my son who did nothing but fight with each other. And my younger child, Jack, he's so amazing and so awesome. I mean, he was delayed, and I was alone. I was alone to deal with all of that. I was alone to provide therapies. The only therapies that were available, the only intervention and the only doctors that would see him, it would all be via Zoom. And even then, it was very hard to get people to work with us or have anything to do with us. Everybody was just like, we'll wait till this is all over. Meanwhile, I was ticking down the clock for early intervention for my child. It was difficult, and month by month by month, in the beginning, I had so much hope that we were looking at, a 3-month problem, a 6-month problem. By next year, by the fall, we'll go back to school. That wasn't the case for us at all. We remained in total lockdown for pretty much the entire time we stayed in Mexico. That was 1.5 years of COVID in lockdown in Mexico. And one thing that I realized, at least about the area where we lived, is that so many families, like Mexican families who I, considered friends. I'd only been there for a short time, so I hadn't made like lifelong friendships at that point, but I considered them friends, or I really liked them. What they had done, their whole setup for their lives was that they all lived in homes on cul-de-sacs, and the whole cul-de-sac would be like extended family, like brothers and sisters and grandparents all living together. And then they would have a, now this is an area of Mexico where there's a lot of drug trafficking. So then they would have like a big fence with like security around that cul-de-sac. Okay. So when I was coming forward and like reaching out to people and being like, I know we're not allowed to like get together, but I'm willing to have your kids at my home at any time, just for my kids to have someone to be with. I'll take care of your children. I'll feed them. I'll teach them. I'll do anything for you. So many other families were like, sorry, we've made a pact with our family that we're only interacting with family. Well, easy enough for them because they all had family around in these cul-de-sacs, and all the kids, I remember watching it from the street as I was like driving by, all the kids were playing together in the middle of the cul-de-sac with their cousins. And my family, my children didn't have that. It was so hard to be going through that. Thank you, Kathy. That's very, very sweet of you. Thank you so much. You remember me looking for Legos? Oh my God, yes. Yeah, Legos were a big thing. I'm sorry, my dog wants to go outside. Let me let him out. Yes, Legos were a big thing for Jack. Go ahead. Go. Go ahead. I got it for you. All right, it's open. Come on. Come on. Crazy dog. Okay. Yes, you remember me looking for Legos because then, let me just take this off. After all that shit happened in Mexico, we had to leave and go to our next posting basically, and we were sent to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And guess what? That place was in full lockdown as well. We arrived and I was like hoping and praying that my children would finally go back to school. Are you coming back in? Come on. Come on. Come. Go for it. I was hoping and praying my kids would finally go back to school, and they didn't. We had, I think, another 4 months without school. So my kids were out of school for over 2 years. And it was a big issue. So we had I think we had a more extreme situation than a lot of people. That's my understanding, because I know a lot of people back in the US went back to school more quickly. They were able to get out and do doctor's appointments or whatever. We felt very, very isolated for a great deal of that time. And of course, it was very hard for me because I knew that I had to do everything possible to socialize. Both of my kids, but definitely my younger son. And I worked so hard on it. I mean, I was literally like, I'll pay you. I'll rent your kid to come over and, and play with my kid. Thank goodness I didn't have to do that. I did make some really good friends, some really good people who were wonderful. And their kids were wonderful friends to my kids, but it was really hard. So once I came back to the US, and even like a little bit last year, when I watched what was going on during COVID for the Brown family, I got really angry. I don't know if I'm the only one, because I am very supportive of people isolating. I mean, I'm a nurse. I knew that there were people dying. I knew, especially for people who have some kind of a medical issue or a disability or elderly people, of course, I wanted to keep them like healthy. And it was scary. And in the beginning, we were losing so many people. And we had just arrived to Mexico from India. So we knew a lot of families back in India who were in dire situations. There was a lot of death and a lot of illness there, and not very many opportunities to go to a hospital that actually, was at the standard of like a first world country, So I really understood that there was a lot of pain. There was a lot of pain. So I'm not downplaying, like, if someone chooses to isolate, or they really, they're in a certain situation where they have to. Of course, that needed to happen for so many people. But when I watched what was going on with Cody Brown and the wives, I became very angry about it. Let me see what Anastasia says. Oh, they're talking about getting COVID. Anastasia says, Carol, was it a sense of smell or taste that was the long-term problem, or did it cause other health problems? Yeah, I would like to know, Carol. I'm guessing you had COVID. Carol says he has trouble breathing, walking, and other issues. So many people had long-term effects from COVID as well. Yeah, that's really hard. Oh, hi, Nikki. Good to see you. Nikki's here. Hi, Ginger. Someone said, I hope they let you have a support person with for delivery. That was awful too. I did know we had a family that we were very close with who was in China, had to evacuate China during COVID. And they had a lot of friends there who were Chinese, and they were saying that was like a huge issue because no one could go with the mother to the hospitals to give birth. It was a whole thing. It was just a very hard time. But I have a lot of issues with what Cody Brown chose to do to his family and to his children. I really do. I know for me, and this is just my personal opinion, please don't take it to heart. Don't feel like I'm coming after you because we may have a difference of opinion. But for me, after maybe like 6 months of completely isolating for COVID, I was like, I honestly would rather get sick. I would rather take a chance of someone getting hurt. And you're going to think I'm a horrible person, but I really felt this way. I would rather take a chance of someone getting really sick and getting hurt than isolate my children like this. This is like hell on earth for them. That's what I was feeling at a certain point. It was pretty dire. And I had to really reach out and start getting involved with other families, other people, and being like, I'll do anything to have my kids like hang out with you. We can't be alone like this all the time in a country that we barely know. And we no longer were allowed. That was another thing. We no longer, once there was a period of time, I think it was like a 1 month period of time in which you were allowed to evacuate. And after that, we were no longer allowed to say, okay, I want to go back and live in the US. Now we had to stay where we were. That's it. We made the commitment to my husband's job, and that was it. I remember, so we had this, the job, here we go. Of course, I can't say too much about where my husband works because there are a lot of asshole people who come over here and bother me and my family. But where my husband works, they had this humongous, I'd love to show you guys pictures, maybe I will sometime, this humongous Olympic-sized swimming pool. And it was heated and it was amazing. Well, they shut it down, and it was summer and it was so hot in Mexico. They shut it down because of COVID. When they eventually opened it up, they would only allow one family to come at a time. You couldn't like come with friends. And so you had to sign up. There were only like a few families left, like actually living there at that point in time. And so we would sign up at least once a day. You'd have a 1 hour slot where you could go and use the swimming pool. And I just have all these pictures of me and my kids like alone in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Like it was crazy what we experienced. So, I mean, I've been through it. I've been there. I've seen a lot of really hard stuff happening with COVID in Mexico. I know that people were very scared because, again, there were limited options for, healthcare. In Mexico, we saw a lot of people like injecting themselves, like long before the vaccine came out. They were injecting themselves with like ivermectin. It was really crazy. So, we saw all of that. And yet by like 6 months into COVID, I was like, I cannot do this anymore. So for me, watching Cody and the wives really struggle and try to figure out what, how they can deal with the COVID crisis was really difficult to watch. Because now, I will say, I'm not sure if some people in that family have medical issues and they don't want to disclose that on TV, but we're not aware of anyone specifically in that family like being in a situation where they would be more prone to get very sick if they contracted COVID. And that was something that I thought about a lot. Like, I don't know if maybe Robin does have a thyroid issue. People talk about that all the time. Maybe there's something else going on, but I thought it was completely overdone and even ridiculous, the lengths that Cody Brown went to in order to completely isolate himself. I mean, I remember seeing it at first and being like, this is sad, but I guess people have to do what they do. And then as it went on and on and on that season, I was completely shocked. He's living in a home with only one family. He's living in a home with only one family. Let me do this. I hated how Robin over-exaggerated her illness as well as Cody was even worse. I know. Ivana, do you remember Ivana's the only one who likes, Ivana, I feel like you're the only one that gets my, when I try to be funny. Do you remember when I made the little video where I was like fifth wife and I was like coughing up a storm and being very sick? I totally agree that Robin and Cody, they overdid how sick they were. Kathy says, eat well and your immune system will be strong. That was a big thing in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. It's interesting to see how the different communities deal with it. Kuala Lumpur they were very focused on isolating as well, but everybody everywhere was just like eating these amazing soup dishes that are like, full of onions and garlic and just a lot of things that they believe, and I believe it too, really help like build your body, build your immune system. It was interesting when I was over there. A friend of mine took ivermectin for months. Yeah, we saw that. It was huge in Mexico. I had people contacting me. I just friends would be like, is there any chance you can get us some ivermectin and send it up to the United States? And I was like, no, I can't even leave my house. So I won't be getting anyone ivermectin, but I would go outside of my house. We also had like barbed fencing like all around our house. That's just what we were given. And I would go outside like to take the trash out because they were still running trash services. And I would just see boxes, discarded boxes of ivermectin on the street everywhere. It was very weird. So let's see. Keisha says, and all the Browns had to do was avoid the backlash was to reveal Robin's illness, if indeed she does have Hashimoto's. But I think, Keisha, my issue with that would have been, if that was the case, then maybe they should have set it up like Cody is with Robin for a period of time, and then he goes to be with the other families for a period of time, and he has to maybe detox, like there should have been, it should have been like, okay, Robin, if you're the only one in the family that has this extreme kind of medical condition, then, maybe you're the one that needs to be more isolated, but not every other child in the family needs to suffer and not have a father figure in their lives because you're the only one with this medical issue. And I'm saying that like from my own point of view, like I feel if I were put in Robin's shoes, I would be like, you know what? No, you're not, Cody, you are not going to sit here and not see your other children. We're going to do something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I have to get my own apartment to isolate in and I just keep my 2 younger kids with me. I don't know, but I am not going to allow all the other children to suffer because of what's happening to me. As a mother, I could not do that. I could not do that even if they weren't my children. They were someone else's children. Thank you, Ivana. You're the only one who understands my fifth wife videos. Hi, Parawoman Radio. I want to advise everyone to check out Parawoman Radio. I went on a panel of hers recently with Toddy Wenskip. It was really cool, and I want to share that video. I'm going to share it. I'll try to look for it later today. And you can see like Toddy and I and Parawoman Radio kind of talking about our differences in opinion about what's going on with Gypsy. And that relates to everything that's been happening lately with me talking about Fancy and everything that's happened. Anastasia, onions and garlic are antioxidants and antiviral. Yeah, they were using it big time over in Kuala Lumpur. Her neck looks like she does have some sort of thyroid issue. I agree with that. I mean, we don't know for sure, but that's definitely what it looks like. Okay, let's listen to Wei Wei says, my husband died of COVID. My daughter was disabled. My mother, myself, and both my daughters now have long COVID. Oh my God. When did it start? Wei Wei. I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry about your husband. And that's why I am trying to say that it is a serious issue. I'm not saying like, just screw it. Like everybody should have been allowed to go out and do whatever they wanted. But I am saying that everybody's situation was a little bit different. And when we watched the Brown situation, what I saw was Cody Brown had a lot of older kids. Okay, this is what I want to, Keisha says, true, it was the perfect excuse for them. And Carol says, didn't Robin's daughter go out to a party? Yeah, I think we have some video of her out at a party. Triple J says, Cody was such a baby. I think he gave himself COVID, huffing and puffing in the closets, scared of seeing any humans. Yeah, seriously. I don't even know if I really believe that he had COVID. Okay, this is what I want. Oh, fifth wife. Thanks, you guys. I can't see everybody's. It's hard for me to see everybody's comments, but thank you for saying fifth wife is not the most annoying situation. Yeah, we are really sorry for you, Wei Wei. Yeah, it's awful looking back on how many people were lost. We lost some people in my family. It did tend to be older people, but we had some older people who got COVID and did so well with it, like without ever having been vaccinated. So it was interesting to me to watch how you couldn't necessarily know, like just because you were elderly didn't mean that the virus was going to affect you in such an extreme way. And someone who is very healthy, we knew healthy people who passed away from COVID as well. So that was really hard to watch. And I know it was frightening for everyone. But I'll tell you one thing, I would not have allowed that to keep me away from my children. I don't, I know Cody's situation was different. He has children in different households with different moms, but I would have done anything I had to do. So here's the other thing that I want to share with you guys that I think is really important, and it relates to what happened with Garrison. So when I was living in Mexico, we still had this small community of Americans who were living there together for this job, and there were some families. There were only a couple of families, maybe like 3 families with small kids. I was one of them that chose to stay. There were a couple of families, maybe more, maybe like 4 families with older children, teenage children. And I think that they were definitely like more willing, or thinking that it would be easier for them to go ahead and stay at post, and, that their kids would be fine and be able to attend school online, and everything was gonna, it would be okay. It would be harder for younger children, but it would be fine for these teenagers. And I remember that I was very concerned about what was going on. And I had been part of like a group that's kind of like a social committee group where we would all get together. And so I had started to write to people and be like, is everyone doing okay? Like, this is really hard to watch how everybody has to be so isolated. And I got a lot of pushback from that. I had a lot of people saying like, we're fine. Like, we know how to do this, as families that are asked to, do such and such for our country. Like, there was just a lot of like, we'll do whatever we need to do and get through this, and our family's doing well and we're staying strong. And I was trying to share that I had found like online like therapy, like therapists that can meet with kids or whatever. And people were nice, but you could tell they were like, we don't need any of that. Like, I'm sorry you're having a hard time, Katie, but like, we're doing okay. And yeah, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, I guess I'm the one that's like struggling the most. But I want to share with you guys that during that period of time, I think it was a year and a half that we were there, out of those 4 families, we had 3 families have to medevac teenagers out of the country back to the United States for medical treatment because they tried to unalive themselves. Out of 4 families, we had 3. Dog's coming in again. Come on in. I started to realize that it was the teenagers who were actually suffering more than my 2-year-old who couldn't get outside and didn't have any friends and was on the spectrum. Like, I think the teenagers were affected in that community. The teenagers were affected in such a greater way. All of those kids are okay to this day. Some of them, it was interesting to see, like, some of them ended up having to attend boarding schools because their families had to stay at post. So it was, it's just a crazy life. But I just remember thinking to myself, oh my God, it's like these people, I'm sure they were wonderful families, love their children, but it's like they didn't understand the mental health cost of what was happening, because they were communicating to me like everything's fine. We'll get through this, like we've gotten through so many things before. And, their kids were really struggling. The reason that I share this, yes, teens are in need of help desperately. Thank you, Wei Wei. So the reason that I'm sharing this is because Garrison was like an older teen at that point in time. And so were a lot of the other boys in the family, like Gabe. And I'm willing to bet you that they actually suffered a lot from all of the forced separation, the forced isolation, more so than Robin's little kids who had to, because I think I was struggling more than my kids. I was worried about them, but they have done so well. I look back and think about how worried I was, and I look at them now and like the awards that my daughter gets and the way that my son just surprises me every day with how cool and amazing he is. And I think it's so sad that you were so worried, Katie. Like, they are amazing kids. They've turned out to be amazing. But I think based upon, what I experienced, I think that young people who were in those teenage years or like very early 19, 20 years were really suffering. We're really in a place of that kind of isolation and just being on the internet every day, not getting to be around people your age. Mental health issues are abounding in this type of age group right now. Recently, I I was looking into, I wanted to get some extra therapy for myself, and I could not believe how hard it was to get in with a mental health therapist or an expert or whatever. And I was talking to my friend who is a psychiatrist. I was just talking to her about it, and she's like, you will not believe how deep, how wide, how huge the need is for mental health support now. And it's been that way since COVID. And coming out of COVID is when they had the biggest boom. I think it was, she was saying last year, 2023 was like a huge boom, and everybody really coming out of their homes and needing, and I mean, obviously this is in my area, needing all this support. The wait lists are insane. I'm in the United States. I know not all of you are, so maybe it's different where you live, but the wait lists are pretty insane. I am now in a place of feeling grateful that my kids were young during COVID, because it was hard on me, but I think that they've done very well. When I look back on so many of those kids who missed their high school graduation, I mean, graduation is one thing, but I'm talking about a whole year, like the dynamic of closing your 4 years of school at your high school, the dynamic of saying goodbye, the lessons that we learn as things start to change in that period of time, that they were just sitting in their house, some of them in the basement. And especially when I say in the basement, I mean like kids that in the teenage years nowadays, it's like they get on their computer, they take it somewhere dark. That's why I say basement, and they're just kind of totally wrapped up in their electronics, right? We know this isn't good for people's brains. It's not good for me. I've had periods of time where I get very into my electronics and I see that it causes problems. Yeah, so there's so much of that going on, and I can't even begin to address when you have families that were very low income, when you have families that couldn't provide, electricity and food, and they were very dependent upon the school system to really help their kids, have the necessities that most of us take for granted. Ginger says, my daughter's grade 12 graduation was a display of photographs on YouTube, no in-person ceremony. It's really hard to hear that. I mean, there's a lot of kids, there's some kids that could thrive in that kind of situation. But as I said to you, in a small community with 4 families with teenagers, we had 3 families medevac their children out for trying to unalive themselves. And it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking for me to realize that it was that bad. And it was just really sad. Let's see. Yes, little ones really don't understand you are their world. The teenagers had the worst time, I think. That's what I'm starting to realize. So, I mean, that's kind of why I wanted to come here and talk a little bit about Garrison, because I think that was the time frame for him. He would have been an older teenager. He ended up going into the military. I'm not trying to suggest what the causes were, because I think there's a lot of complicated issues. There could be a lot of multiple causes that are going on, but I've seen a lot of depression in kids of that age, in their early 20s now. There's just a lot that people are dealing with in that age range. Even like the price of living, being able to afford your own home. But then on top of that, feeling like you never really learned to create like long-lasting relationships, or some of the relationships you had kind of went by the wayside because you were isolated for so long. Of course, there were people who, like my sister-in-law in Florida was like, we were home for 6 months and that was great. And then, we went back to work, and everyone went back to school. So I'm not saying it's the same for everybody, but I think in Garrison's situation, we did see that, maybe he was able to get out of the house, but he still had this huge issue in his family. Like COVID really broke up the connections and the relationships he had before. And he just had to get through it. I I think, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy, so much. Okay, Adriana says, if we look in his eyes during last season, he always had a sadness. Yeah, that's so awful. And it's really hard because I believe, Janelle seems like a very wonderful, kind, and good mother, like someone who provides boundaries and, has certain expectations of her kids, but also shows a lot of love and kindness to them. I'll never forget the clip of Garrison coming home. I think it was from like boot camp or training, and he ran to his mom and they gave a big hug, and Janelle was like laughing, and it was beautiful. It was so beautiful. Like, I hope my kids are even, half as excited to see me someday, because I think Janelle is a really good mom. So I believe she probably did the best that she could. I'm sure she tried to be there for all of her kids and be there for Garrison. But we all know that once children are over the age of 18, that becomes more complicated too, right? They have their own lives to lead. Garrison was part of the military, and that can we don't know everything that he went through involving that. It can also be really hard when you leave the military and now you don't have that brotherhood around you at all times. It made me sad to realize that Garrison had people living with him who were his roommates who didn't even know him that well. It sounded to me like there was still this sense of isolation. On top of all of that, we really watched Cody use COVID as an excuse to just give up on being a family with the other wives. And, I hope that that's not out there happening to so many people. Obviously, it was different in a polygamous type of situation. But I think there are some people who used COVID to come together more as a family. And you just... clearly that didn't happen with Cody at all. And we also, you guys remember, we heard Cody talking about how older kids don't need me. It's the younger kids that need me. That's definitely a misnomer, I think. I was thinking to myself, like, I had kind of like a shittier childhood. I had a really hard childhood before the age of 10, but I only have good memories from it. I was just thinking to myself, this is my own personal experience. There was more poverty. I was very, very sick. You guys probably don't know that I had all these surgeries done after I was born, and I was very sick for a lot of my life. Anyway, up until I was 10, there was just a lot going on. And when I was 10 was when my grandfather passed away, and he was my main, he and my grandmother were taking care of me. So, there was a lot. There was just like a lot of stuff that happened, but I only have good memories of that time. Then once I became a teenager, I actually was living with I was in a different, nicer school system. I just think like a lot of things had improved for me, but I only have memories of like, that was really hard. That was really sad. Like, I was just in this place where I only saw things through a negative lens. And that actually I probably needed family and parents a lot more during my teenage years. And I think we see that with a lot of kids. Let me see. Erie Jane says, as your children get older, they need their parents or a support system, especially in this crazy world. For sure. Yeah, I almost think it's even more so once they first leave, right? Because that's kind of where Garrison was when you first leave the home and you're going out into the real world, and, things aren't always what maybe you thought they were going to be. I've seen that a lot with a lot of people that age. I was thinking to myself recently, I definitely, and I know a lot of you have been there. I grew up with a lot of poverty and a lot of issues, right? But my husband and I feel like we've worked so hard in our lives to accomplish what we've accomplished. And so, we have a nice house. I'm not saying it's like the top of the line house. We have a nice house. We can afford to do certain things for our kids that no one could ever afford to do for us or whatever. But sometimes I worry that my kids have this idea that this is life. And I've had to say to my kids several times, I'm like, we really have this life because of Dad's amazing job, like how hard he worked, all the best schools that he went to, the fact that Mom pulled herself up by her bootstraps and, made a medical career out of really, I'm the first person in my family to go to college, that kind of stuff. Like, I really had to tell them, it took work to be able to achieve this. And you're not just going to get it when you leave the home at 19. Like, you're not going to have half the stuff we're able to afford here. Just going to the grocery store and buying whatever cereal you want. I was telling my daughter, I was like, girl, there was a time when I was living off of, ramen. And, I said, when I left home, I was working 2 jobs, going to school, living off of, the cheapest stuff I could find at the dollar store to eat. And I really don't want my kids to not understand that life isn't all, you can have whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. Like, you have to work. You have to work to be able to accomplish these things. And I think it's really hard for some kids when they turn 19, 20, and they get out into the real world and they realize, wait a minute, there's no money in my bank account. I can't afford to put gas in my car, So I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I think that that's an issue a lot of people in that age range are experiencing. Tammy says, I was so poor growing up that when I didn't have to buy generic paper towels, I thought I made it in life. Yes. Oh my gosh. Even now. So I still buy, like, I'm still kind of stuck in that mindset of like, I buy everything on sale and coupons, and my husband will come home and he'll be like, I hate this toilet paper. Like, why can't you get Charmin? He'll have to, like, we've really actually gone to this system where he orders like the kind of stuff that he wants to come regularly from Amazon because I will only buy like the shittiest things at Walmart. I'm still kind of stuck in that mentality. Yeah, Ivana says, I lived off of noodles too and I couldn't afford a car. Yeah, exactly. Like, and even like, I'm highly aware that I had more than my parents had, than my parents and grandparents had. They were like starving, so I understand my life was pretty good in comparison. Like, every generation did a little bit better for the next generation. But I do get kind of worried. I think I really have maybe too much ingrained. Oh my God, my daughter Aubrey. Okay. So yes, I have definitely been with my daughter Aubrey, like constantly, like, I'll be like, Aubrey, things are not going to be this way. When you turn 19, you need to think about like, going to school. What kind of job are you going to get? I like hammered it way too much into her. And I swear now that, Jack is a young kid and he's only like 6 years old. Whenever Jack will be like, when I grow up, I want to be a YouTuber, a famous gaming YouTuber, because he likes to watch games on YouTube. And Aubrey will be like, Jack, that is totally unrealistic. Do you know how many people actually make it in the YouTube world and on social media? She's like, you need to think about your life and how you're going to be able to get it together when you turn 19 and leave this home. And I was like, oh my God. It's like me speaking through her, and I didn't like it very much. I felt like I was being way too like, over the top. So I think it was really funny. Kathy, me too. That's like a problem that I have. Sometimes I overspend on my kids for sure, but like I really like to save money. I really like to get things like super cheap. So that's an issue that I have. Yeah, so when I saw the People magazine article and Mary was like, there are good days and bad days, and sometimes I'm still really hurting. I'm like, of course you are. This is a forever. Oh my God. I can't even. That's why it's hard to think about the show coming back next season. Although, I mean, I know everyone does, and I do. I want to see, how they're doing and what's happening with them. But it's hard because, like, this is the kind of grief you have to carry in a backpack on your shoulder for the rest of your life. This is not like, oh, well, hopefully in a couple of years, you'll start, those memories and those feelings will start to fade. Are you kidding me? No. If they do start to fade, you will be in a puddle on the floor because you'll feel like you're losing. the memories that you had. There is nothing, I just can't imagine that there's anything more devastating than to lose a child. And to lose a child to suicide, I think, is one of the hardest situations a parent can go through, because you're always questioning, and it's not on you. It's not something that you did. It's nothing like that. But what you're carrying in your book bag, it isn't just grief. It's guilt, shame. You shouldn't have to carry it, but it's there. Now, I think that Cody does have a lot of that he needs to be carrying around. He needs to think about how he can change for those children. Triple J, sometimes it's not hidden in a backpack on your back. You have to carry so everyone sees. Yeah. Kathy, I feel exactly the same way. I don't know what I would do. I don't even know what I would do. My life is for my kids, and people say it shouldn't be that way, but my heart, that's how I feel. You know, I've had careers, I've done whatever, I'll have a career again, but like my heart and soul are in my children. And I believe Janelle probably felt that as well. I can't speak to what all the other mothers were feeling. I know that we want to pay like homage to Christine as well, and probably all the other mothers, you know, do feel a great sense of loss. But I think that there's just, when it's your own child, your own child that you have given everything to, that you helped create, you do feel a greater sense of even just responsibility, that, you know, what else could I have done? And oh my God, Janelle did everything she could. There's nothing she could have done, but she has to live with that. I hope that Cody's living with it, and I'm not trying to be mean to him, but I definitely see him as being someone who's like out with the old and with the new, focused on what's right in front of him, not willing to really be like take an insightful look into what's going on with himself, with his family, with the mental health issues in the family. And, you know, I think that he wants to leave behind everything that happened, like for the past 30 years, and just move forward with Robin and her kids. And yeah, I if I could hurt him, you know, for doing that, I would, honestly, because that is so wrong. And we see that in other men who try to move on from their families. No, that is not forgivable. I mean, I see that person in a certain way, and it is not good. You know, you don't leave your children behind. Even when you know, have to get out of the relationship with the mother, you should be 100% still focused on your kids. Cody needs to get a freaking wake-up call for the rest of his children. I 100% agree. Let's see. I'm trying to go up and see other people's. Okay. Ginger says, my husband lost his 12-year-old son 24 years ago, and that pain, it never fades. Yeah. I think that that's probably I mean, it's hard to compare people's pain, but I think that would be the deepest pain, is to lose a child. I stopped watching Sisterwives when Garrison died. Yeah. Way. So I had to as well. I don't even like to talk about it anymore. Kathy, I don't know if you're saying that to me, but if you are, thank you very much. And there's a lot of wonderful moms here. I'm glad that you guys are on my channel. I want to say I'm so grateful for the people who watch my channel. I'll let you guys go soon. I just wanted to say that recently I've been dealing with a lot of people who come around who are supposedly like trolls. I never understood that term, and I didn't understand what it was. And I'd be like, are trolls just people who disagree with you? But now, over time that I've been on social media for almost 2 years now, I've come to realize, no, there just really are people who come to your social media and your channel to fuck with you, to F with you. And it's horrible and it really sucks. So sometimes I kind of look around and go, oh, there's some people that come around to this channel and I think, why are you even here? But when I look at the core group of people who have been around and how wonderful you all have been over the past year, especially since I've been home in the United States, I just want to say that I really appreciate all of you. Okay, let's see. There are more wonderful moms worldwide than there are not, for sure. Mama Celeste says, I'm not sure I can watch again. Something about Garrison's death shattered my ability to watch. Totally agreed. I was going to go back and do, I started it. Like I was looking at old videos because I really liked season 1 and I liked season 2 and I wanted to, go over all that. And I said, I just can't do it anymore. Yuri Jane says, I like you couldn't watch and not sure if I can. My heart breaks for Janelle to this day. I can't even imagine. I know. I can't imagine either. Adriana, Katie, you have brought a lot of us together and we love you for that. You've become a safe haven for me and thank you. Oh, Adriana, you're special to me too. Thank you. The pain of losing a child never leaves you. You just learn to live with it. That's why it's so uncomfortable for me to think about doing another season. I mean, what does money or fame or anything, it means nothing when you don't have your child. So I can't, I mean, if I were Janelle, I'm not, this is nothing regarding Janelle. I just think I would be a shell of myself and I don't need that on TV. It would just be very hard for me. I can't believe the haters don't just watch something else. Yeah. I think, I have one major thing is I have criticized Katie Joy on this channel and that brought a lot of negativity to me. And then recently I gave like some, what I thought was very minor criticism to Fancy Maselli and that brought a lot of negativity too. So I am willing to say like, maybe it's deserved because I was criticizing, but I'm also kind of like, annoyed with people. Like I would never expect any of you who are, people who have been on my channel for a while to go to someone else's channel and like start shitting all over them just because I had a disagreement with them. But I swear so many people like devote their time to coming to my channel and just, I don't know, making fun of my glasses, saying even things about my kids. And I just think to myself, like, what is wrong with these people? Like, what are they doing with their lives? So weird to me. Okay. Mama Celeste, I love and support you. Thank you. PJ says reality TV hurts people in it. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it brings some money and fame to them, right? And especially like I remember when Sisterwives first started, they were struggling financially. I don't know. I think maybe money is the root of all evil. Even though I would really like to have some money, trust me. It's so awful. I wish you didn't have to deal with the trolls. Yeah, I mean, I want to make it clear, like, I could just get rid of my channel. I mean, I understand that this is part of, like, being on the internet. But I think I've been very lucky to have, like, wonderful people in my life, right? So when these trolls come around and I'm dealing with whatever is going on with them, I just think I've never dealt with anyone like this. Like, people that just spend all their time on the internet writing like shitty comments to people and also like how invested they are that like moments after I put up a video, they're going to come and be like, you're just jealous of Katie Joy Paulson. You just don't. Oh my gosh. When I spoke out about Fancy Maselli, I had a bunch of people come and they're like, you're a nurse and you don't even care about people with disabilities. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And these people started talking about how, and this, it's not something negative towards Fancy, but people were saying that Fancy has a disability and they were going like, she has ADHD. She's been diagnosed with this and that. And it really rubbed me the wrong way. Like, do not talk about my abilities as a nurse. You have no idea everything that I've done with my life, all the stuff that I've been through, how hard I've worked, how I've been there for so many people. And not only that, but part of like being therapeutic and being a nurse is setting real boundaries. especially with people who are dealing with mental illness. People with mental illness, like myself, I have mental illness issues. I mean, we deserve love and understanding, and we also deserve to be told you're still going to be held accountable for your behavior. That's a part of what therapy is like you're accountable, you know? So I've found like, you know, it's just, and also there's a lot of like, I've seen this too. If somebody just watches like a part of your video, and I've done this as well, you watch a part of someone's video and you assume that they're saying something, but maybe later in the video they said it differently or something. So there's a lot of like stuff that goes around the internet that can become very frustrating when you're a creator. All right, let me go down to the bottom. Boundaries are fundamental. Yeah. Like I know that many of you, okay, I know that many of you have disabilities. And would you agree with me, like, that you can't just go around shitting on people and being like, it's because I have a disability? You know, like, I'm sorry. I'm not comparing with anyone. But like, for me, I was born with an omphalocele, and I've dealt with a lot of medical issues my whole entire life. I have Crohn's disease. Like, all of you are there. There's a lot of things that you could list off, right? I have certain issues. I don't go around being like, something happened and it's because of what happened to me when I was born. You know, like, I don't. Come on. Yes, I am a mental health nurse, and I'm a damn good one. And I have put boots on the ground time and time again with people you wouldn't even, you know, shed a tear for. People, all of you that are criticizing me, you want them thrown away and have nothing to do with them, you know? So yeah, that really rubs me the wrong way when people talk shit about, I've seen this before too, talk negatively about someone's like actual career and profession. And also, like, for me, it's not just that, it's like a calling, right? Like, I have been there for children who spend all day stabbing themselves in the leg because they have severe autism, and they'll take things and put it, you know, in places you don't want me to talk about. You know, I've been there, boots on the ground, taking care of, loving, providing constant care for kids like that. So I can't even with people who are like, I'm disabled. So it's like, that's why I, you know, I have a reason why I just yell at everyone and treat them like shit. No. Oh my God, Ivana. Ivana's my moderator, and she says, I'm kind of a mess, unseen and seen, LOL. You're not. I would never use my disability as an excuse to be rude and hateful. I know that about you, Ivana. You're like one of the nicest, most wonderful people. Ivana is someone who always sends me like little links to things to make me a little happier throughout the day, and she never complains. She listens to me complain about my life sometimes, but she's always so positive. You're amazing, Ivana. You really are. Oh, Kathy says, don't give these idiots so much energy. Yeah, I know I can't, because it really like takes away from my kids. So anyway, okay, long live. It was good to see all of you. I'm sorry I didn't like incorporate more videos and stuff. Let me see. Heathen Mama 5. I can't abuse people because I have a bunch of autoimmune conditions. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Thank you for saying that. Plus chronic health issues. Really? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You get it. You get what I'm saying. I don't like when people try to do that. I had a bunch of people come and they were like, do you even care? This person has a disability. I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course I care. Of course. I want everyone to be doing as well as they possibly can. There's still boundaries. There's still expectations that you don't treat people like shit. Okay. Much love to all of you. Thank you for being here for so long. I can't believe my kids are still asleep. What will I do for the next 20 minutes? All right. Much love to all of you. I hope I see you guys again and we head down another rabbit hole together.